Massive stone circles predate written history by thousands of years. These are not random piles of rock, but encoded manuscripts of a lost scientific language. They're stones whispering geometric secrets across millennia. Why did our ancestors invest such incredible effort to embed complex patterns into their most sacred spaces, from Göbekli Tepe to the Maltese megaliths? By the end of this journey, you will see these ancient wonders in a completely new light. What profound message did the first architects weave into stone using only circles and squares? And how could a temple's shape itself become a bridge to the divine? What does it feel like to stand in a space designed by a mind that saw the universe in perfect geometry? Our ancient ancestors did not invent sacred geometry so much as they discovered it whispering all around them. They watched the sun and moon trace perfect, repeating arcs across the sky. They saw the seasons cycle in an endless, reliable loop. This was a world alive with pattern, a cosmic order that begged to be understood and eventually mirrored. The very first expressions of this understanding were not carved in stone but painted on cave walls with ochre and charcoal. In the flickering torchlight of deep caverns, they left their mark not as random scribbles, but as deliberate sequences of dots and the stark outlines of their own hands. These were the initial characters of a symbolic language, the first human attempt to capture a universal rhythm. Even in their camps, the placement of tools, hearths, and resting areas often followed an unseen order, suggesting that daily life itself was woven with symbolic meaning. This was the essential mental blueprint, a profound shift in consciousness where the human mind began to see itself as part of a grand, structured design. Then came the monumental leap. The impulse moved from the portable and the temporary to the permanent and the colossal. Abstract thought demanded a physical home. The first temple was not merely a building, it was an idea given weight and form. A deliberate attempt to build a small, perfect universe here on Earth, a sacred echo of the cosmic order they revered. Göbekli Tepe shatters the timeline of human achievement. To stand before its great T-shaped pillars, erected around 9600 BCE, is to witness a project that defies all earlier assumptions. This was not the work of a settled farming society but of hunter-gatherers, people who should have been, by traditional logic, solely focused on survival. Yet here they are, carving and moving 16-ton stones, arranging them into vast, purposeful circles. This sight alone pushes back the dawn of monumental architecture by thousands of years, standing a full 6 millennia older than Stonehenge and even predating the invention of pottery. It forces a profound question. What inspired such a colossal, coordinated effort before the first permanent village was even established? The answer seems to lie in a shared human awakening. Göbekli Tepe is not an isolated miracle. Look to nearby Newgrange with its own finely carved pillars, or to the dense, art-filled settlement of Shatters. Then journey thousands of miles to the islands of Malta, where the massive stones of Gewith dot above Mnajdra rise from the earth, another temple complex built by a people with no metal tools. These sites form a scattered constellation of early genius. They hint that across vast distances, separate cultures experienced the same powerful impulse to build ordered, sacred spaces on a grand scale. The old story claimed that agriculture created surplus, which then allowed for complex society and religion. But what if we have it backwards? What if the human need to come together for something greater than themselves, the drive to build for the gods, was the very spark that ignited civilization itself? These stones are not just architecture, they are the birthplace of a new way of living. The circle holds a profound and silent power. It is the shape of the sun as it crests the horizon, the form of the full moon, and the endless loop of the seasons. For the first architects, this simple, perfect form became the ultimate symbol of the cosmos itself, a shape with no beginning and no end, representing eternity, unity, and the sacred cycles they observed above. This was not a casual design preference. It was a deliberate act of world-building. At Göbekli Tepe, the massive T-shaped pillars were not placed at random. They were arranged in great concentric rings, one inside the other, creating a series of stone circuits. This same impulse echoed across ancient Britain, where the earliest phase of Stonehenge was not the familiar trilithons we see today, but a vast circular earthwork enclosure. Why this universal obsession with the circle? The act of drawing a circle on the land was a way to define sacred space, to create a clear boundary between the ordinary world and a separate, holy realm within. Inside that ring, the ground became something more than just earth. It became a symbolic reflection of the celestial dome, a place where the community could gather to connect with the rhythms of the universe. By building in circles, our ancestors were not just constructing walls. They were building a model of their entire perceived cosmos, a small, perfect world where heaven met earth, and where human rituals could directly participate in the eternal order of life, death, and rebirth. This foundational principle, born in the earliest temples, would echo for millennia, its power undiminished. But the circle alone could not contain the entire vision. The cosmos needed an anchor, a foundation rooted in the solid reality of the earth. This is where a second, equally powerful form enters the story, the square. If the circle was the shape of the heavens, the square became the symbol of the terrestrial world. It represented stability, perfect order, and the four cardinal directions that defined the edges of the known world. This was not a random choice. A square is firm, grounded, and immovable, the very essence of a stable foundation. To build a temple with a square base was to plant a flag of permanence in the soil, to declare that this sacred space was a fixed point of order in a sometimes chaotic world. This geometric idea gave rise to one of the most precise and widespread practices in ancient architecture, cardinal alignment. Look at the great pyramids of Giza or the massive ziggurats of Mesopotamia. Their bases are not just roughly square, they are astonishingly precise squares, and their sides are meticulously aligned to the north-south and east-west axes. This was no happy accident. Achieving such precision required generations of patient, sophisticated astronomical observation. Builders would have tracked the slow wheeling of the stars around the pole star, the celestial anchor of the night sky. They would have marked the exact points on the horizon where the sun rose and set on the solstices, the two most extreme turning points of its annual journey. By mapping these celestial events onto the ground, they could lay out a perfect square that was in perfect harmony with the fundamental forces of nature. This alignment transformed the temple into a sacred cross, a geometric bridge connecting the structure to the four corners of the world. It was a way of saying that this place was not just a model of the sky, but a map of the entire created order, a point of balance where the celestial met the terrestrial. The square brought the earth into the divine equation, showing an evolution in sacred geometry from a purely cyclical model of the heavens to a more complex system that sought to unify the sky above with the ground below. Yet a third principle completes this ancient geometric language, one that breathes life and motion into the stillness of the circle and square. This is the spiral, a form carved with striking clarity into the great stones of Newgrange in Ireland and countless other megalithic sites. Where the circle speaks of eternal return and the square of stable order, the spiral tells a different story. It is a shape of dynamic energy, of growth and expansion. You can see it in the unfurling of a fern, the vast whirl of a galaxy, and the elegant chamber of a seashell. It is the pattern of life itself, constantly unfolding and reaching outward. For the temple builders, this powerful symbol likely held deep meaning for the journey of the spirit. It may have represented the soul's path through cycles of renewal, or mirrored the celestial dance of the sun and moon as they traced their great arcs through the heavens. The placement of spirals at passage tombs is particularly telling. Etched at the entrance to these resting places, the spiral may have served as a final, sacred map. It could guide an individual from the known world of physical form into the mystery of what lies beyond, a visual promise of a continuing journey rather than a final end. This use of an evolving, non-static form reveals something extraordinary about the ancient mind. They were not just masters of depicting perfect, finished states of being. They sought to capture the very processes of transformation and becoming that define our existence. Their geometry was not frozen, but alive with motion, a sacred art that understood life as a constant, beautiful unfolding. These T-shaped pillars are not silent stones, they are a congregation. Carved from solid limestone, each one is a colossal, stylized human figure, with the horizontal bar of the T forming broad shoulders and a distinct head gazing out across the enclosure. This was a deliberate act of anthropomorphic geometry, a design choice that transformed the temple from a mere building into a gathering of stone beings. The space becomes alive with presence, as if the ancestors or the gods themselves are standing in a silent, eternal circle. This architectural choice is profound. It suggests that the community did not just build a temple to worship in, they built one to worship with, surrounded by these powerful, watchful forms. The surfaces of these pillars are a canvas of carved life. Foxes, cranes, boars, and snakes intertwine across the stone, a menagerie frozen in a complex symbolic dance. These are not random decorations. They likely tell a sacred story, represent spiritual clans, or map a cosmology where humans and animals shared a deeply connected world. This blurring of line between architecture and sculpture reveals a mindset where every element was loaded with meaning. The very act of shaping a 16-ton block into a perfect T-shape, then covering it with intricate carvings, demonstrates a masterful control of stone and a powerful, unified intention. The temple was not a backdrop for ritual. It was an active participant, its geometric forms and symbolic carvings working together to create an immersive, meaningful experience for all who entered. This encoding of narrative directly into structure is one of humanity's earliest and most ambitious artistic achievements. Across the Mediterranean, the Maltese archipelago became a canvas for this sacred geometry. Here, the temple culture refined the circle into something even more complex and intimate. The temples of Hypogeum and Mnajdra are not simple rings of stone. They are architectural blossoms unfolding in a spectacular cloverleaf design. Imagine walking into a space that feels less like a single room and more like a series of interconnected chambers, each one curving gracefully into the next. This is the lobed floor plan, a sophisticated arrangement of multiple apses that creates a journey inward. You move from the bright outer world through a doorway and find yourself in a curved space, only to see another opening leading to a further, often more central, chamber. This is not a random maze. The design often follows a precise trefoil pattern with 3 lobes, or a quatrefoil with 4. These shapes have long been associated with harmony and natural balance, like the petals of a flower or the leaves of a clover. The geometry itself guides you, creating a ritual pathway that pulls you deeper into the heart of the sanctuary, moving from the public to the profoundly private. This architectural journey was synchronized with the cosmos itself. The massive limestone blocks of these temples are fitted together with such precision that they have endured for over 5,000 years. But the true genius lies in the openings carved into these walls. Specific doorways and narrow passages were not placed at random. They were carefully aligned to act as celestial viewfinders. On the mornings of the equinoxes, when day and night are perfectly balanced, the rising sun would have sent a blade of light slicing through a specific aperture, illuminating a carved altar or a particular stone deep within the temple's inner recesses. At the solstices, the sun's extreme turning points in its yearly journey, different alignments would have been activated. This means that as a participant moved through the cloverleaf's nested spaces, their physical journey was mirrored by a celestial event. The very architecture was choreographed to the dance of the heavens. What emerges is a picture of a culture that used geometry to create a complete, multi-sensory ritual experience. The complex ground plan guided your body on a symbolic path inward. The celestial alignments provided a dazzling, predictable light show that marked sacred time. The combination of these elements transformed the temple from a static building into a dynamic instrument. It was a place where you could literally walk through a model of the cosmos and feel its rhythms in your very bones. This was sacred geometry at its most powerful, not just as an abstract idea, but as a living, breathing environment designed to unite the community, the earth, and the sky in a single, harmonious act of worship. Beneath the sunlit temples of Malta lies a deeper mystery carved into the very bedrock. The Hal-Saflieni Hypogeum is a vast, multi-level underground sanctuary, a labyrinth of chambers and passages hewn from solid limestone over countless generations. It was a final resting place for thousands, a sacred space of profound quiet and shadow. And here, the ancient architects demonstrated that their mastery of geometry extended far beyond what the eye could see. They were also masters of sound. One chamber in this deep complex is known today as the Oracle Room. It appears unremarkable at first, a small, carved niche in a stone wall. But when a person speaks in a deep voice directly into this niche, something extraordinary happens. The sound does not fade. It amplifies, swelling into a low, resonant hum that seems to pulse through the stone itself, vibrating through the floors and walls to be heard clearly in chambers far across the complex. This was not a lucky accident. The entire room is a precision instrument. Its specific shape, its exact dimensions, and the careful angles of its walls were all calculated to trap sound waves, creating powerful standing waves and specific resonant frequencies. For someone standing in that space, the effect is not just auditory, it is physical. The deep vibration can be felt in your bones, a tangible force that seems to shake the air. In such an environment, during a ceremony filled with chanting or ritual speech, these acoustic properties could profoundly alter human perception. The steady, overwhelming resonance could help induce a trance-like state, making the words of a spiritual leader sound as if they were emanating from the earth itself. The voice of an oracle would not simply be heard, it would be experienced as a physical presence, the very stones seeming to speak. This was the voice of the gods made real through geometry. It reveals a breathtakingly holistic vision of the temple. These spaces were not just visual models of the cosmos, they were complete sensory instruments. They were designed to be seen, to be walked through, and most powerfully, to be felt and heard, fully immersing every participant in a reality that truly felt touched by the divine. This same geometric genius appears on the windswept Salisbury Plain. The Great Sarsen Circle of Stonehenge stands as a monumental lesson in applied mathematics. Its builders, working over 4,000 years ago, were employing principles of geometry that would not be formally written down for millennia. Look at the famous trilithons, the giant 3-stone gateways. The relationship between the two massive uprights and the lintel stone, perfectly balanced atop them, creates a series of perfect right-angled triangles. The builders were using what we now call Pythagorean triplets, specific ratios between whole numbers that satisfy the famous theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. One of the most striking examples is found in the rectangle formed by the 4 station stones. Its proportions create a perfect 5, 12, 13 triangle. This was not a coincidence. This precise geometric knowledge was the key to the monument's enduring stability and its powerful, harmonious presence. How did they achieve this without modern tools or a written mathematical language? Their tools were humble, but their understanding was profound. They used simple ropes and wooden pegs to lay out these perfect shapes on the ground. By carefully measuring and knotting ropes in these sacred ratios, they could create any triangle or rectangle they needed. This was a deeply practical, embodied form of knowledge passed down through generations of builders. They understood that a triangle with sides in the ratio of 3, 4, 5, for example, would always produce a perfect right angle, the strongest possible corner for their colossal stone frames. This empirical mastery allowed them to translate an abstract geometric ideal into staggering physical reality. Stonehenge is not merely a collection of large rocks. It is a testament to a widespread ancient wisdom, a proof that the language of sacred geometry was both spoken and built long before it was ever written in a book. This deep, instinctual drive to align stone with sun reached its zenith in structures that functioned as perfect solar instruments. One of the most breathtaking examples is found not in a temple's grand facade, but in a small, precise opening above the entrance to Newgrange in Ireland. This is the famous roof box, a slit carved with geometric intention. For the rest of the year, it sits in darkness, but on the dawn of the winter solstice, something miraculous occurs. As the sun crests the horizon on the shortest day of the year, a single, narrow beam of light pierces through this opening. It travels down a long, dark passageway, a corridor built to guide it, until it strikes the very back wall of the innermost chamber, flooding the sacred space with a golden light that lasts for precisely 17 minutes. This was not a vague alignment. This was a feat of engineering and astronomical prediction so precise that it could capture the sun at its weakest point and use its light to mark a specific moment in time, year after year for millennia. On the sun-drenched islands of Malta, the Temple of Mnajdra demonstrates a similar genius on a different scale. Its southern unit is a masterclass in solar geometry. Here, the main doorway itself acts as a celestial viewfinder. On the equinoxes, when day and night exist in perfect balance, the rising sun aligns perfectly with this central axis, its rays pouring unimpeded into the heart of the temple. But the builders went further. They designed the stone doorways on either side to capture the sun at its extreme turning points. During the solstices, the sun's rays would not enter the center, but instead would frame these megalithic doors, creating a play of light and shadow that marked the sun's furthest journey north and south. Achieving this level of precision was the work of generations. It required patient observers to track the sun's slow migration along the horizon, noting its exact rising and setting points each day. They had to understand that these points move gradually throughout the year, reaching their northernmost and southernmost limits at the solstices and crossing the true east-west line at the equinoxes. This celestial knowledge then had to be translated from the open sky onto the fixed landscape. Using simple but powerful geometric principles, they established long sight lines from a chosen building site to distant natural markers on the horizon. They calculated the angles needed so that a doorway or a specially carved window would frame the sun only on those most sacred days of the year. In doing so, they transformed inert stone into a living, breathing cosmic clock. The temple was no longer just a place of gathering, it was a mechanism that marked the passage of time itself. It signaled the return of the light after the long descent into winter, the moment of balance in spring and fall, and the peak of the sun's power in summer. This intimate connection wove the community's rituals directly into the fabric of the cosmos, tying their celebrations, their agricultural cycles, and their understanding of life and rebirth to the undeniable, life-giving power of the sun. The temple became a guarantee that the great cycle would continue, a promise written in geometry and illuminated by the heavens. The sun's reliable path is one thing, but the moon is a far more elusive partner in the celestial dance. Its rhythm is a complex 18.6-year cycle of shifting extremes, a pattern known today as the Metonic cycle. To track this lunar ballet required a depth of observation that pushes our understanding of ancient science to its limits. While a solar alignment marks a single day, a lunar alignment predicts a pattern that unfolds over a generation. Some researchers point to mysterious features around Stonehenge as evidence of this advanced knowledge. They suggest that certain circular arrangements of pits and the placement of wooden posts were not random. Instead, they may have served as a colossal astronomical calculator, designed to mark the moon's most dramatic turning points, known as the major and minor lunar standstills. At these moments, the moon does not simply rise and set. It reaches the farthest possible points on the horizon, both north and south, in a slow, majestic swing that takes nearly 19 years to complete. Imagine the dedication required to observe this. A child might hear the elders speak of the moon's most extreme southern rise. That child would grow to adulthood, watching and waiting, before finally witnessing that same event again, confirming a cycle they had known only through stories. To then encode that long-term knowledge into the very landscape, using geometry to create a permanent physical model of this cosmic clock, was an intellectual triumph. This was not just about marking time for planting or celebration. The ability to predict the moon's path, and perhaps even the awe-inspiring spectacle of an eclipse, would have granted the temple builders and their descendants a profound kind of authority. They became the interpreters of a deeper cosmic order, the ones who could read the secrets woven into the night sky and translate them for the community. The temple was more than a calendar. It was a library of celestial knowledge written in stone and earth, its geometric language capturing the complex heartbeat of time itself. This invisible architecture of harmony extended far beyond the simple circle and square. Ancient builders were tapping into a deeper, more dynamic order, one governed by ratios that cannot be expressed as simple whole numbers. They discovered the power of the square root of 2, a number approximately equal to 1.414. This is not just a mathematical curiosity, it is the fundamental relationship between a square's side and its diagonal. Draw a square, then draw a line from one corner to the opposite corner. The length of that diagonal is the side length multiplied by the square root of 2. This seemingly simple relationship unlocks a world of profound visual balance. When you create a rectangle whose longer side is related to its shorter side by this ratio, you achieve a shape of incredible stability and grace. But the true magic of this proportion reveals itself when you begin to divide the rectangle. You can split it again and again, and the resulting smaller shapes will often maintain that very same square root of 2 ratio. This creates a cascading effect of self-similarity, a property known as dynamic symmetry. It is the difference between a rigid, man-made grid and the living, breathing pattern of a growing fern or a spiraling seashell. The harmony is not frozen, it is generative, it unfolds. By weaving these irrational ratios into the very floor plans and proportions of their temples, the architects were doing something extraordinary. They were embedding a fundamental law of natural growth into their stonework. This is why these spaces feel so inherently right, so organically balanced to our senses even today. We are subconsciously responding to the same geometric patterns that structure the natural world around us. The temple was not just aligned with the cosmos, its very proportions pulsed with the same life force that guides a leaf as it unfurls toward the sun. This simple yet profound shape holds the key to a deeper geometric mystery. The Vesica Piscis is born from the overlap of two perfect circles, creating that distinct almond form at their center, known for centuries as the mandorla. It appears deceptively simple, but within its elegant curves lies an entire geometric universe. This shape is fundamentally generative. With nothing more than a straight edge, you can use the proportions of the Vesica Piscis to construct a perfect equilateral triangle, the most stable of all forms. From that triangle, you can derive the square, and from the square, the pentagon unfolds. This means that one of the most complex and sacred shapes in geometry, the pentagon, has its ultimate origin in the humble overlapping of two circles. This was not just mathematics to the ancients, it was a map of creation itself, a visual demonstration of how complexity and harmony emerge from a single, unified source. The shape became a powerful symbol of intersection, representing the sacred meeting point of the spiritual and material realms. Think of a traditional painting of a holy figure, often surrounded by a glowing, almond-shaped aura. That is the mandorla, a visual declaration that this individual exists in both worlds at once. This symbolic power was directly translated into temple architecture. The shape is implicitly present in the double circle plans of some henges, where two great rings overlap, creating a shared, liminal space between them. Later, it became physically manifest in the soaring arched doorways of cathedrals and the curved niches of countless shrines. When you pass through an arched doorway whose curve is derived from the Vesica Piscis, you are not just moving from one room to another. You are symbolically traversing a geometric portal, leaving the profane world behind and stepping into a sanctified reality. The temple's blueprint was therefore a deliberate diagram of a spiritual journey. It was designed as a womb of creation and a threshold of transformation, a space where the divine could enter our world and where humanity could, in turn, step closer to the eternal. This was the ultimate purpose of sacred geometry, to build not just with stone, but with meaning, crafting portals that guided the soul as much as they sheltered the body. These animal carvings are a language written in stone. Look closely at a single pillar from Göbekli Tepe, and you will see more than just a collection of beasts. A fox is not simply a fox, it is a symbol of cunning and intelligence, perhaps representing a spiritual guide through difficult knowledge. A crane, with its tall, watchful posture, embodies vigilance and a connection to the watery realms between worlds. The snake, shedding its skin in an endless cycle, becomes a powerful emblem of rebirth, transformation, and the mysteries of the underworld. Each creature is a glyph, a character in a lost symbolic alphabet. Their placement is not random. They are arranged in sequences, almost like a sentence, or clustered in meaningful groups that tell a story. Their interactions are deliberate, a fox facing a crane, a snake coiling around the edge of the stone. This is a symbolic syntax, a grammar of myth carved into limestone. The geometry of the pillar itself acts as the page for this text. The flat, broad surface of the T-shaped stone provides a perfect canvas, its edges framing the compositions, guiding the eye from one symbolic group to the next. The carvings are integrated into the very structure, flowing over the shoulders and sides of the monolithic figure, making the art and the architecture one and the same. This transforms the entire temple from a simple gathering place into a three-dimensional library. To walk among these pillars was to move through a sacred narrative. For those who understood the code, the temple was not a silent ruin but a resonant space humming with meaning. It conveyed a complete cosmology, a story of how the world worked, the nature of the spirits, and humanity's place within it all. The animals were the teachers, and the geometry was the language they spoke. So much of their genius was held not in books, but in their hands. The Neolithic master builders did not possess lasers or steel, yet they laid out perfect circles and squares across the landscape using a profound understanding of applied geometry. Their toolkit was astonishingly simple, built from materials they had on hand. A length of rope, a sharpened wooden peg, and a straight sighting pole were all they needed to translate cosmic order into stone. To create a perfect circle, they would drive a central peg into the earth. Tying a long rope to this anchor, a builder could simply walk the rope taut, scratching a flawless, giant circle into the soil. This single, elegant technique lies behind the great rings of Stonehenge and the circular enclosures at Göbekli Tepe. But how did they square these circles, creating the stable foundations we see in so many temples? The secret was in the knots. They understood that a rope knotted into segments of 3, 4, and 5 units, when stretched taut, would form a perfect right-angled triangle. This is the famous Pythagorean triplet, a mathematical truth known and applied millennia before the Greek philosopher gave it a name. By laying out these knotted ropes on the ground, they could establish a perfectly square corner, the essential starting point for any structure meant to mirror the 4 cardinal directions. For the long, straight alignments needed to track the sun and moon, they used sighting poles. A builder would place one pole at the construction site and another far in the distance, carefully adjusting them until they lined up with a specific notch in the hills or the rising point of a star. This created a celestial highway made of sight, allowing them to orient their entire temple to the cosmos with breathtaking accuracy. This practical geometry was not the guarded secret of a lone genius. It was a shared, communal knowledge, a living tradition passed from one generation to the next. The construction of a temple required the entire community to understand and execute these techniques in unison. The raising of a single megalith was a symphony of coordinated effort, guided by a common geometric language. This reveals that the true monument was not just the final stone structure, but the very act of building it, a societal achievement that wove abstract knowledge, collective labor, and spiritual purpose into a single, enduring legacy. This central point of connection was known across countless cultures as the axis mundi, the unmoving pillar at the very center of the world. It was envisioned as a great cosmic mountain, a world tree whose roots plunged into the underworld and whose branches held up the heavens, or a divine pillar physically linking all layers of existence. For the people of Göbekli Tepe, this abstract concept was given breathtakingly solid form. Their massive T-shaped pillars were not merely statues, they were direct architectural expressions of this cosmic axis. Each one was a stylized human figure, yes, but on a symbolic level, they were the very pillars holding up the sky, rooted deep in the earth and reaching for the divine. This idea echoed through the ages. At Stonehenge, the central axis of the Great Trilithon, the tallest pair of stones capped by their lintel, served the same profound purpose. It marked the spiritual and geometric heart of the circle, the still point around which the entire cosmos turned. Geometrically, this central axis was the generative seed from which the entire temple grew. It was the fixed point where the builder's peg was first driven into the earth, the origin from which the sacred circle was scratched into the soil using a length of rope. All subsequent rings, all alignments to the solstice sun or the standstill moon, radiated outward from this single hallowed spot. This was not just a practical starting point for construction, it was a theological statement carved into the landscape. By building their temple around this symbolic axis, a community was doing something extraordinary. They were declaring that their sacred space was not just a place to observe the cosmos from a distance. They were building the very navel of the world, the one stable point where communication between the human, the divine, and the ancestral realms was possible. This transformed the temple from a place of local worship into the center of the universe itself, a point of ultimate stability and connection that gave cosmic meaning to their entire existence. That profound impulse to build cosmic order into the earth did not fade with the last stones of Göbekli Tepe or the final alignment at Stonehenge. It simply found new forms, evolving alongside humanity itself. The great circles and mounds of the Neolithic were the first chapter, but the story of sacred geometry was only just beginning. This deep-seated knowledge traveled, carried not in scrolls but in the minds of builders and the shared traditions of countless generations. It was a living seed, ready to blossom in new soils and under new skies. The next great leap in this journey takes us to the sun-baked plains of Egypt. Here, the simple, powerful circle transformed into something even more permanent and profound, the perfect square. The earliest Egyptian tombs, known as mastabas, were low, rectangular structures built of mud brick. Their form was a direct and deliberate statement, a geometric anchor in the desert. They were oriented with astonishing precision to the four cardinal directions, their sides facing true north, south, east, and west. This was not merely a matter of aesthetics, it was a philosophical declaration, a way of fixing a human soul's final resting place within the eternal, stable order of the cosmos. The mastaba was a square of stability in a world of shifting sands. Then, in a breathtaking act of architectural ambition, these squares began to reach for the sky. The step pyramid of Pharaoh Djoser at Saqqara is a clear bridge in this geometric evolution. Imagine 6 mastabas of decreasing size, stacked precisely one on top of the other. It is a staircase of squares, a man-made mountain aiming for the heavens. This stepped form finds a powerful echo far to the east, in the ziggurats of Mesopotamia. These towering structures were also built as sacred mountains, their sides a series of ascending square platforms, each level a step closer to the realm of the gods. The geometric idea of the square, representing the ordered earth, was now being stretched vertically, creating a physical pathway between the human and the divine. The ultimate expression of this idea is, of course, the Great Pyramid of Giza. Its base is a near-perfect square, aligned to the cardinal points with an accuracy that still baffles modern surveyors. Its 4 triangular sides rise to a single point, capturing the very rays of the sun in their majestic form. The pyramid is the ultimate geometric synthesis. It takes the square of the earth and unites it with the triangle, a shape that points inexorably upward, channeling the gaze and the spirit toward the celestial realm. It is a perfect, silent hymn written in stone, a testament to a civilization that had mastered the art of turning geometric ideals into eternal monuments. This same thread of knowledge wove its way into the heart of classical Greece. The Parthenon, standing atop the Acropolis, may seem a world away from a Neolithic stone circle, but it is built upon the same geometric foundation. Its beauty is not an accident of proportion. Its dimensions are governed by the very same irrational ratios that gave life to the temples of Malta, a sophisticated understanding of harmony and balance. The circle, the square, and the dynamic spiral had now been refined into the golden rectangle and the perfect column. From the primal circle scratched into the soil to the polished marble of the Parthenon, we see an unbroken lineage. It is a continuous conversation across thousands of years and thousands of miles, a shared human quest to build bridges to the divine using the universal language of geometry. These colossal building projects were more than spiritual acts, they were social revolutions. Before the first stone was set, human communities were likely smaller, more scattered groups. But to raise a Göbekli Tepe or a Stonehenge required something unprecedented, the coordinated labor of hundreds of people over many generations. This was not a task for a single family or clan. It demanded that disparate groups come together, setting aside old differences for a shared, sacred goal. The very act of building became a powerful social glue. To move a 16-ton pillar, you need a unified community pulling on the same ropes, a physical manifestation of cooperation on a scale never before attempted. This collective endeavor forged a new kind of identity, one that stretched beyond blood ties to a shared purpose etched into the landscape. Out of this necessity, a new social role was born, the master builder. The complex geometric and astronomical knowledge required to align a temple to the solstice sun, or to lay out a perfect pentagon using only ropes was not common knowledge. It became the specialized domain of a select few, individuals who could read the stars and command the geometry. These early architects or priest astronomers were likely the world's first technical elite. Their unique skills granted them immense authority and prestige, establishing some of the earliest forms of social hierarchy. The knowledge of sacred geometry became a source of power, separating those who designed the cosmos in stone from those who moved the stones into place. Once the temple was complete, its geometric perfection continued to shape the society that built it. When the community gathered inside those perfect circles and squares, they were not just attending a ceremony. They were participating in a shared sensory experience within a space designed to feel inherently right and divinely ordered. The harmony of the architecture, the predictable play of light on the equinox, the resonant hum in a chamber like the Hypogeum, all of it reinforced a single, powerful message. It told every person present that they were part of a coherent, meaningful whole, a community whose social order was as natural and eternal as the cycles of the sun and moon. Their worldview was literally built into the walls around them. In this profound light, sacred geometry reveals itself as one of humanity's first and most powerful social technologies. It was the tool that allowed scattered groups to coalesce into complex societies, providing both the practical means for large-scale collaboration and the spiritual justification for a new social order. The temples were not just shelters for rituals, they were the very engines that forged civilization, using the universal language of shape and number to build not only monuments, but the very fabric of society itself. Yet these geometric wonders often find themselves wrapped in modern myths. The idea that only a lost civilization like Atlantis could have built them, or that the stones were levitated into place by supernatural means, creates a compelling fantasy. But this fantasy does a great disservice to the real people who accomplished these feats. The ancient builders were not mystics wielding magic wands. They were the brilliant engineers and astronomers of their day, armed with profound patience and a deep connection to their environment. Their knowledge was not given to them by outsiders or gods, it was earned. It was built over countless generations through careful observation of the sun's shifting path, the moon's complex dance, and the simple, undeniable principles of leverage and geometry. Imagine the first person to realize that a rope knotted in a 3-4-5 ratio would always create a perfect right angle. that was not magic, it was a moment of pure human genius, a discovery that would echo for millennia. Attributing their work to fantasy robs them of their rightful legacy. It suggests that our own ancestors were incapable of such intellectual triumphs, which is simply not true. The real story is far more inspiring. It is a story of human ingenuity rising to meet a profound spiritual need, using the materials and minds they had to create something eternal. Their true power lies not in imagined supernatural aid, but in the incredible potential of the observant, collaborative, and determined human mind. By seeing them as they were, we honor their achievement in the way it truly deserves. These temples were living libraries long before the first word was ever written. In a world without text, the complex knowledge of solstice alignments and perfect pentagons had to be carried entirely in human memory, passed with meticulous care from one generation to the next. This was not a simple act of rote memorization. It was a sophisticated cultural technology, an art form in itself. The master builders and priest astronomers developed powerful mnemonic techniques to safeguard their sacred science. They wove numerical values and star positions into epic songs, whose rhythms mirrored the cycles of the moon. They choreographed dances that physically enacted the geometric relationships between the circle, the square, and the spiral, turning abstract ratios into muscle memory. They told creation stories where the heroes were not just gods but celestial bodies, their journeys across the sky encoding the precise dates of equinoxes and solstices. Every ritual performed within the temple walls was a multi-sensory rehearsal, reinforcing the essential data needed to maintain the cosmic connection. The temple itself was the ultimate memory aid. Its very layout functioned as a colossal memory palace. For the initiated, each massive pillar at Göbekli Tepe was not just a stone figure but a chapter. The specific carving of a fox on the third pillar might cue the memory of a particular star's rising, while the arrangement of stones in a specific apse at Mnajdra could trigger the sequence of knots needed to lay out a square root of two rectangles. Walking the ritual path through the cloverleaf chambers was like walking through a pre-recorded instructional manual, where every turn and doorway held a piece of the architectural blueprint. This oral and performative transmission ensured the survival of this sacred science for centuries, proving that human memory, when properly trained and culturally supported, can achieve a fidelity rivaling any written text. The true monument was not just the stone, but the song, the story, and the dance that kept the knowledge alive, allowing a community to build its world in perfect harmony with the cosmos, generation after generation. This geometric language was spoken across continents by voices that never met. While the great circles were rising in Britain and the first pyramids were taking shape in Egypt, another civilization on the opposite side of the world was whispering the same sacred syntax. The Sun Pyramid at Teotihuacan in Mesoamerica is a staggering example. Its base is a near-perfect square, and its entire ceremonial avenue is precisely aligned just over 15 degrees east of true north. This is not a random error, but a deliberate, sophisticated orientation shared by other sacred sites in the region. Meanwhile, far to the north, the great earthworks of the Hopewell culture in North America were sculpting the landscape into vast geometric enclosures. They built perfect circles and precise squares, often connected by causeways, mirroring the same fundamental forms found at Stonehenge thousands of miles and years away. How could such distinct cultures, separated by vast oceans and millennia, arrive at the same architectural vocabulary? The answer may lie not in lost continents or ancient contact, but deep within the human mind itself. Psychologists and anthropologists point to a concept known as neuroaesthetics, the study of how our brains are wired to perceive beauty and order. certain shapes and ratios appear to be universally pleasing to humans. The circle, with its lack of sharp edges, is inherently safe and encompassing. The square represents stability and balance, a fundamental concept for any society building a permanent home in the world. The golden ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1, appears in the spiral of a nautilus shell and the proportions of the human face. It is a pattern our brains are primed to recognize as harmonious because it is woven into the very fabric of the natural world we inhabit. When a culture seeks to create a space that feels sacred, that feels inherently right and connected to the cosmos, they are not inventing forms from nothing. They are drawing from this deep, shared well of human perception, rediscovering the same geometric truths because those truths are a fundamental part of our shared biological and cognitive inheritance. The temple, therefore, becomes more than a local cultural expression. It is a universal human instinct made solid, a collective reaching for harmony using the only language profound enough for the task, the silent, eternal grammar of shape and number. The stones of the Neolithic did not mark an end but a beginning. This ancient geometric language was carried forward, its syntax translated into new materials and new faiths, yet its core grammar remained unchanged. Centuries later, the master builders of Europe's Gothic cathedrals became the new guardians of this knowledge. They looked upon the circle and the square not as pagan symbols, but as divine tools. In the soaring heights of Shatters or Notre Dame, you can see the old principles reborn. The floor plan of a cathedral is often laid out as a vast cross, but its design was generated from the same simple shapes used at Göbekli Tepe. Builders would use a compass to inscribe a circle, then use the geometry of the Vesica Piscis, that almond shape formed by two overlapping circles, to determine the precise proportions of the nave, the height of the arches, and the placement of the windows. They believed they were building to the glory of God using the very mathematics of creation, that these perfect ratios were a reflection of the mind of the divine. The cathedral was their cosmic mountain, its spires reaching for the heavens just as the pyramids once did. Then, in the Renaissance, this quest for harmonic order became a conscious rediscovery. Architects and artists like Leonardo da Vinci actively sought out the lost texts of Vitruvius, a Roman engineer who had recorded the ancient principles of proportion. Leonardo's famous Vitruvian Man is a perfect emblem of this revival. A human figure is drawn simultaneously within a perfect circle and a perfect square, his navel at the very center. This was not just an artistic exercise, it was a philosophical statement. It declared that the human body itself was the ultimate measure of all things, and that the same geometric laws that governed the cosmos were mirrored in our own form. The sacred geometry of the temples had turned inward, finding the universe within humanity. This thread of meaning stretches unbroken into our modern world. In the 20th century, the influential architect Le Corbusier developed his modular system, a scale of harmonic measurements based on the human form and the golden ratio. He sought to bring a timeless sense of balance and beauty back into modern design, believing that buildings should serve the human spirit, not just enclose it. From the silent circles of prehistory to the steel and glass of the present, the underlying impulse remains the same. It is a perennial human desire to create order from chaos, to build spaces that do more than shelter us, but that resonate with a deeper sense of meaning and connection. Our ancestors did not just build structures, they built worlds, and we have been living in the echo of their geometric dreams ever since. Unraveling these geometric intentions is a puzzle set on a shifting board. The original builders left no written manuals or diagrams, forcing us to interpret a silent language carved in stone. millennia of ground settlement can tilt a once perfect alignment by a fraction of a degree, enough to cast doubt on its original celestial target. Stones from a sacred circle might have been hauled away centuries later to build a farmer's wall, their sacred geometry repurposed for mundane needs. Even the simple fact that many sites are only partially excavated means we are often trying to understand a full symphony by hearing only a few of its notes. This creates a profound intellectual challenge. There is a constant, subtle temptation to view these ancient minds through the lens of our own modern geometry, to see the Pythagorean theorem where they may have seen a simple, practical ratio of knotted rope. To avoid this, the field has become a conversation between many disciplines. Archaeoastronomers use sophisticated software to model ancient skies, testing whether a doorway truly framed a solstice sunrise 5,000 years ago. Geophysicists use ground-penetrating radar to map buried post holes and hidden chambers without disturbing the soil. Experimental archaeologists grab ropes and replicas of stone tools to see if a proposed building method actually works with the technology of the time. This is slow, meticulous work, a collective effort to listen carefully to the faint, geometric whisper of the past, ensuring we hear what the stones are actually saying, and not just the echo of our own assumptions. Our brains are wired for pattern recognition, an ancient survival tool that once helped us spot a predator in the dappled forest light or identify a safe path home. This deep-seated need for order extends even to the shapes we find beautiful. Proportions like the golden ratio, approximately 1.618 to 1, are not human inventions but discoveries from the natural world. You can see this same elegant spiral in the curve of a seashell, the unfurling of a fern, and even the precise arrangement of seeds in a sunflower, because our own bodies are built with these same harmonious proportions. From the length of our fingers to the shape of our faces, we are subconsciously drawn to them. When we walk into a space built with these intrinsic ratios, our mind does not need to calculate the math. It simply feels a profound sense of balance, a quiet rightness that seems to echo the very structure of life itself. The ancient builders, through generations of observing the world around them, learned to speak this silent, biological language. They crafted temples that did not fight against our perception but worked with it, creating environments that felt less like buildings and more like extensions of a natural, sacred order. This is the subtle genius behind the enduring power of these sites. They do not force a feeling of awe, they gently invite it, using a geometric vocabulary that our own minds are primed to understand and embrace. The story of these ancient temples is not one of superstition but of science. It is a chronicle of the human intellect awakening to the mathematical patterns of the universe and daring to build them into the earth. Our journey from the silent circles of Göbekli Tepe to the sun-pierced chambers of Newgrange reveals a profound truth. Our ancestors were not primitive mystics. They were the first engineers, the first astronomers, and the first philosophers, using geometry as their universal language. This was not a scattered effort, but a coherent, worldwide pursuit to map the heavens, to structure society, and to seek a tangible connection with the divine. The legacy of their quest is not locked in the past. It resonates in the soaring arches of cathedrals, in the harmonious proportions of classical art, and even in the modern design principles that seek to create spaces that feel inherently right to the human spirit. Each time we stand in a building that inspires a sense of peace and order, we are feeling the echo of that ancient geometric dream. As we continue to listen to the whispers from these stones, we decode far more than ancient building techniques. We uncover a fundamental chapter of our own story, a testament to the timeless human drive to find meaning, to create order from chaos, and to leave a permanent mark of our understanding upon the world. It is a quest that began with nothing more than a rope, a peg, and a vision of sacred harmony, a vision that continues to shape our world today.